Hello, brilliant and embodied souls. My name is Kim. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. It is the end of my workday, and I decided to sit down in front of my deck collection and pull out some decks that help me with self-care. If you have been facing a lot of stressors because of what is happening collectively here in the States, if you live in the States, wherever you live, if you've got turmoil around you, if your personal life is really, really struggling, I feel like this is the perfect video for you. I just wanted to see my decks through the lens of self-care. I turn to my decks in dark and difficult times when I am feeling exhausted or I feel incredibly overwhelmed and stressed out. My decks have shown themselves to be a massive resource time and time again. So this video is intended to inspire a conversation around self-care and the decks that really shine for self-care. I have thought about this in terms of 6 categories of self-care and created some prompts. So if you want to join in, you are so welcome to. I would love to see the decks that resonate for you in terms of self-care. There is a 7th prompt that opens things up. But you don't have to join in this tag. You don't have to make this a VR. You can simply sit back, relax, and enjoy. That is my intention, to have a fun, uplifting, and cheerful video for all of you and for myself. To decompress from my day and to celebrate decks that are really coming through for me at this moment in time. I'm going to flip us around so that we can take a closer look at the decks, and I will see you in a moment. And we are back, ready to take a look at self-care decks. Let me just pull up my prompts and we shall dive in. The first category of self-care decks are decks that support emotional self-care. So this is a deck that helps you process and reflect on your emotions. And for me, that has to be the Wisdom of the Wild Things Oracle, which is a mass market deck by these lovely individuals. This is a really sweet and tender deck, but it is also a touch creepy, which kind of feels right for how I see my emotions. I do a lot of internal family systems work or parts work, which is a therapeutic, which are therapeutic modalities. And I do that with myself, and I also do a lot of that with many of my clients. And I see my parts as creatures, much like these creatures. They have a gremlin / Muppet / puppet like quality. And, so many of my emotions can take on, the qualities of these characters. So I feel very seen by this deck. My internal landscape can feel like the artwork depicted in this deck. So immediately I feel validated and seen by this deck. Then we get into the themes. This is a very supportive, kind, and gentle deck, and yet it doesn't dismiss or ignore the harder things in life. There are a lot of cards that invite reflection about various emotional processes, right? Get Untangled is a great example, when we have a lot of emotions because we're going through tons and tons of transitions. This deck just shows up for me in the midst of emotional difficulty and does so in a very tender and supportive way. The guidebook is succinct, it gets right to the point, and then the images do a lot of heavy lifting. The combination of the key phrases along with the artwork just really does it for me. They really, really resonate. Right, like this Restore Innocence card. Like, I don't know, the artwork and key phrases just sing together. And sometimes, that's not always the case with Oracle decks. Sometimes the artwork and the key phrases or keywords or titles just don't quite match up. I don't find that to be the case with this particular deck. At the end of the day, this is just a whimsical and just downright delightful deck that isn't afraid to go into the muck with you, and yet keeps me, in a tolerable place when I descend into some of the difficult things, like Beware the Shame Creature. Perfect way to end my description and my love of this deck for emotional self-care. It allows me to dip into shame, but not be fully consumed by it. Moving right along, the next category of self-care is intellectual self-care. And this is a deck that stimulates your mind and intellect. I have chosen the Odyssean Tarot for the Greek myths. The author, Chris Welcome, has done a phenomenal job looking at a variety of Greek myths, some of the really well-known ones, but, for example, here in the Five of Cups, we have Demeter. Really, really well-known Greek myths, but then many that are not so well-known, and has created a really jam-packed guidebook that stimulates my intellectual curiosity so well. Right now, I'm finding I want to escape a little bit, and why not escape into some Greek myths where I get to contemplate other people's misfortune, where I get to be entertained by the audacity of the characters within these myths, take an escapist tour of greed and vengeance and power plays. It's a soap opera. Like, let's be real. A lot of the Greek myths were probably intended for that purpose. They were intended for entertainment, and yet they were also allegories and analogies and metaphors for much deeper concepts. So I find myself being very curious and, simultaneously entertained, as well as captivated by the information that is delivered in this deck. The artwork is very, very beautiful and compelling. I do think that AI was used in its creation, so just as a heads up, I did not know that at the time of purchase. If I had known that, would I have purchased the deck? I think I would have. The author has put in so much work into the guidebook. I can overlook the use of AI. So all in all, this is just a phenomenal deck, and it is actually meeting me in some of my intellectual pursuits at the moment. I find myself really drawn to Platonic philosophy and Neoplatonism right now. So this deck just feels thematically on point for me. And then there's just the gorgeous art, which I adore looking at. It's top-notch art for sure. Even if AI was used to create it, I still like the art. What can I say? Our next category of self-care is occupational self-care. So this is a deck that helps you manage stress and workplace challenges. And I have chosen the Visionary I Ching cards for this particular prompt. This is another mass market deck by these folks. This is a very interesting deck because it is based off of the I Ching. The guidebook is really great at giving you information about the I Ching. So if you have no familiarity with that system of divination, this is the perfect deck for you. And that very much describes me. I am not a I Ching aficionado, and this is actually my first foray into the I Ching via this deck of cards. I really like the concepts of that divination system brought into oracle form, and especially this oracle form. The images are so beautiful. I love the watercolor abstract landscapes. It feels really expansive. And there is a emotionality within this deck without having any people or even animals depicted. The landscapes convey so much information, and I find myself calming down, relaxing, surrendering, and being able to get a different point of view on occupational issues. As some of you know, I'm a somatic psychotherapist, so I take my work with the utmost reverence. I am honored to do the work that I do. And yet sometimes it is very, very challenging, and I need to reflect on those challenges. This deck is very strategic. The name kind of says it all in a way, right? A book of changes for intuitive decision making. So when I need to make decisions with regards to how I operate my private practice, this deck really shines. Sometimes I experience a tension between, operating in a healing modality in post, dare I say, apocalyptic capitalism. I have to eat. And then there's the tension of like my own needs with how do I support others. And this deck really meets me in some of the tensions and friction that I can at times experience. This is a beautiful, beautiful deck that simultaneously helps me make decisions and see situations with more clarity, while also bringing me into a state of calm and relaxation, so that I am able to come to creative solutions for a lot of problems so that I create win-wins. That is what I am all about in my life and, in my occupation. How do I create win-win opportunities within my occupational landscape? And this deck helps me. Okay, let's go on to our fourth category, and this is physical self-care. So a deck that promotes your physical well-being. So my previous statement about being a somatic psychotherapist means that I have collected decks that have a lot of somatic and therapeutic exercises or invitations. And this is one of them. It is a jam-packed, concise deck that is readily available. I got it on Amazon. So not tons of money. And it has pictures of various physical and psychosomatic exercises a person can engage in order to address nervous system dysregulation or instances where our nervous systems or my nervous system is overactive or underactive. This is a fantastic tool, and I really see it as a tool. I don't necessarily see it as an oracle per se, unless, but that's not entirely true, right? When I am like, I need physical health help and support, I'll pull out this deck, and it is kind of an oracle in that regard. It's fairly narrow, obviously, right? Because it's not giving any other kind of message. It is really focused on emotional regulation and nervous system toning and things like that. But when you engage in a lot of these activities, like the knee hug, for example, this is physically beneficial, and it really helps with the psychosomatic interface that we all have to contend with, right? What we think, of course, matters. What we feel, of course, matters, which has been the traditional provenance of mental health. But we have sensations. Our body plays a huge role in how we experience our reality. So this deck taps into physical things that we can be doing that will have beneficial impact on our mental and emotional well-being. So I just love it. I love this deck so much. On the back, you do get detailed instructions. I really like this deck because of the cardstock. It's actually linen cardstock, so shuffling this is actually incredibly enjoyable. Shall I do it on camera? You get that like nice linen. Oh geez, that was not very successful. But you get the idea. You get the idea. Like physically working with this deck is also a joy. So I'm really, really into it for this particular prompt. Next up, we have a deck that supports social self-care. So a deck that nurtures and deepens your relationship with others. I have chosen the Solar Logos Tarot for this particular prompt because this deck loves reading for others and wants me to read for others, which is in and of itself a really lovely social exchange, which I find incredibly resourcing. I've been thinking about getting gigs at maybe some local metaphysic stores or apothecaries and doing a little tour of readings there, because I am finding myself loving reading for others. When people have bought readings for me, I have been so thrilled. And I, of course, do read for friends and family, and this deck wants to do that. So it reminds me of all of the instances where I've had really wonderful experiences helping people answer questions and divine into or deepen into various issues within their life. So yeah, I just have so many memories, great memories of working with this deck. Even though it's newer in my collection, I did quite a lot of readings this summer in these particular contexts. The other thing about this deck is all of the people. It is such a people-centric deck, and the people are incredibly emotive. I want these people in my life. I want to be friends with them. I want to hang out with them. There's also something really, really timeless about the people in this deck. Some people seem modern, whereas other people feel out of time or in some kind of historical context. Like this Knight of Pentacles is a great example. So is this Five of Swords. It harkens back to the entirety of human history, which I really, really like. This is a deck that wants to explore the social bonds and some of the tension within our desire and my desire to simultaneously connect with people, but also lean into my own autonomy. There is this fundamental connection and friction and tension between our desire to love and our desire to be free, which is so perfect here with the Three of Wands and the Three of Swords, right? See, this deck is just really attuned. It is a socially and relationally attuned deck. And for that reason, I had to pick it for social self-care. Yeah, I didn't already say this, but this is a independently produced deck that I got on Etsy. So I believe it's still available. The last time I checked, I do believe that there are copies out there. All right, so our last official, our last official category is spiritual self-care. So a deck that connects you to something larger than yourself, fostering a sense of purpose and meaning. I have a perfect pair, and these decks are by the same creator, Skull Garden. Oops, there we go. Both of these can be found on Etsy, and I believe that they're still both available, although don't quote me on that. The reason why I picked these decks for spiritual self-care is that I am really leaning into animism at the moment, and learning about animism and really deepening my relationship with the natural world via that cosmology and metaphysical orientation has been so nourishing to me as of late. I find so much vitality and resource and goodness and beauty within the natural world, and these decks remind me of that. I think it's because of the background. We have these beautiful wood-grained backgrounds juxtaposed with the creatures, which are bizarre, very bizarre, but that's what I also like about it. This deck is asking me to see the more subjective and spirit nature of the natural world. So the creatures in this deck are very unique. You know, the depictions remind me, like, an amethyst isn't just a rock. There's the spirit of amethyst as a whole, just like the human species has a spirit collectively, but then of course individual humans have individual spirits or souls, right? Well, you know, an amethyst is the same. Each individual amethyst has particular essences. So this deck helps me drop into that really relationally meaningful way of interacting with the natural world that I am finding very helpful at this point in time. My self-care practice has a lot to do with getting out into nature, spending time communing with trees and plants, getting to know the local flora and fauna and the land that surrounds my house. So these decks really remind me of that practice and those particular spiritual refuges, if you will, and my relationship with the natural world, how it is such a refuge. Oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, I like that. Both of these decks are fairly bizarre, and I like that. There's also something very quirky and odd about both of these decks. I get that they would not be for everybody, but they are just really, really resonating with me with this idea of spiritual self-care at the moment. I could have picked many, many other decks because inherently tarot and oracle are spiritual tools. So I really look forward to seeing the decks that others find spiritually appropriate for self-care. I think that will be very, very exciting. Okay, so let's move on to our bonus round. And for this, I would love to propose us, or me in this case, thinking about a deck that supports another area of self-care that's important to you. So for me, an area of self-care that's really, really important is dance. I love, love, love to dance, and the She-Wolf Tarot helps me drop into my dancer self. There is a lot of nudity in this deck, and YouTube seems to really dislike representations of the human form right now. So I will only be showing a handful of cards. There are older walkthroughs of this deck out there, but there's something incredibly energetic and ecstatic about this deck. I practice a form of conscious dance called the 5 rhythms. So a typical 5 rhythms practice means going through 5 types of music or 5 rhythms, and how that helps us work through various emotional, relational, mental processes. So yes, we're dancing, we're not talking, we're using our bodies to express and be with ourselves. It's a practice of intimacy, self-intimacy, and body awareness development. All of that is true, but it ends up being incredibly transformative and helps me transmute a lot of difficult things. Ergo, it is probably one of my favorite self-care practices, engaging in the 5 rhythms, whether on my own or in a group. So this deck just reminds me of that practice, the dynamic postures of the people depicted in the deck. A lot of them could be people, captured in a moment of dance, honestly. There's just something so energetic about this deck that I adore. I just adore, right? Like just so much dynamism and potency. This deck is a very, very fierce and potent ally in my self-care. It connects me with vitality, sensuality, body awareness, like all of the zhuzh that I really, really enjoy in life. That concludes my self-care deck tour. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please leave me comments down below about some of your favorite decks for self-care. I would love to know. And please join in, no pressure, but if you want to join in, use the hashtag #MyDecks for self-care. All of the information will be down in the description box. Sending you so much love. Till the next video, ta-ta for now.